Today I'll be going over some of the creepiest stuff we can find in the nighttime sky, and I'll be giving away 2 tickets to Beautifica. Find out how on the next episode of Astronomy and Coffee. Hey folks, welcome to Monday here. Hope you have your coffee. I've got mine here as we settle into our new week of work. So we are now pre-Halloween. I'm going to be showing you some of the weirdest and creepiest things that we can find in the nighttime sky for this Halloween themed show. And I'll be giving away 2 tickets to our Beautifica show. You've probably seen this advertised on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to win those tickets, I'll go ahead and tell you how right now. Go ahead and watch to the end of the show, though, to thank me for that. The first person who emails me at this, where are we at here? At this email address, here you go. This email address. There you go. Email me at that email address. I will hook you up with 2 tickets or some tickets to Beautifica, and we'll see how that goes. Our first giveaway here. Also, we had a very special day recently at our Halloween day at the museum during our Harry Potter show, the Astronomical World of Harry Potter, which I've been talking about. We had a nice wedding proposal in the dome. At the end of the show, we had this OWL quiz where I put these questions up on the dome, and if the audience was paying attention, they could answer the questions correctly and get their own OWL certification. If you don't know what an OWL is, it's a Harry Potter thing, but it's kind of like an SAT sort of for the wizarding world. And so yeah, we were doing this OWL quiz, and at the end of the quiz, I put one more question up on the dome for this young man who was going to propose to his girlfriend, and here are some pictures of that. So congratulations to the happy couple, and what a very special thing it was for us to help them out with that, having a proposal to remember in our dome. Very, very cool thing. Made me quite happy to see that. So let's talk a little bit about those Halloween things we can find in our nighttime sky here. So Halloween's tomorrow on the 31st. We never know when Halloween is. They always change trick-or-treat times. But so we have Halloween coming up. So this is going to be a Halloween theme here. And let's start off with something called the Witch Head Nebula. Let's go out and venture to this Witch Head Nebula and see where this is at and why it looks like and why it is called the Witch Head Nebula. So yeah, first we're going to find something called the Witch Head Nebula. Now this can be found located near Orion the Hunter. So Orion is quite easy to find. You have those 3 stars forming his belt. And when you find Orion, look down a bit to the constellation Eridanus. Within this constellation, you'll find the Witch Head Nebula. It's called that because it appears to mirror a witch's face. Now you'll have to, let's go ahead and show an image of how it looks from a different angle here. So use your imagination to find a witch's head. It's kind of like a side profile, but so this is what it looks like. Well, this is a billowing wisp of dust and gas known as a reflection nebula. It's lit up by the star Rigel, which is a hot blue star bigger than our own star, the sun. And Rigel is Orion's right foot as seen from our perspective, and happens to be the brightest star in the constellation. Well, if we have a witch in our nighttime sky, I'm sure we have a wizard as well. So, yes, we do. In fact, there is in the form of the Wizard Nebula. The open cluster of stars here can be found in the constellation Cepheus. King Cepheus was the father to Andromeda. Well, this collection of stars and dust resides some 7,000 light years away from us and is embedded inside a nebula which spans some 110 light years. Now, you're not going to be able to see this with the naked eye. You have to use a telescope or something very powerful to see this. Now, it gets its name from apparently looking like a sorcerer or wizard, but you'll have to use your imagination to come up with that one on your own. Now, the age of this cluster is said to be about 4 million years old, and the radiation and stellar winds of the cluster's young stars are responsible for creating the nebulous shape. So are witches and wizards kind of part of Halloween? I would say so. We see lots of witches and wizards and stuff when people dress up for Halloween. So in kind of keeping with that sort of fantasy vibe, that sort of dark fantasy vibe here, let's talk a little bit about Algol and Perseus the Hunter. Now, have you seen the original Clash of the Titans? Yes, the original, not the remake Clash of the Titans. Well, I remember renting the Clash of the Titans when I was a kid probably 100 times down at a place called National Video before it was changed its name to Louisiana Video in Denham Springs, Louisiana. My mom would take me there and she would have me rent any movie I wanted, and I would always get Clash of the Titans. And she would get mad at me and say, "Why are you renting that? You've already seen it." I said, "No, because I like it." Clash of the Titans is a great movie. Well, if you're familiar with Clash of the Titans, you may be familiar with the story already. If not, the story goes that there was a king and a queen. It was King Cepheus, Queen Cassiopeia. They had this beautiful daughter named Andromeda. They thought she was so beautiful, that she was more beautiful than anyone on the planet. Well, this angered the gods, so Zeus had Poseidon, the king of the sea, summon the sea monster to ravage the land held by King Cepheus and Queen Cassiopeia. Well, they didn't want this to happen, so they offered up their daughter as a sacrifice. But Perseus heard about this, took action on his own, went off, killed the Gorgon Medusa, took her head, which had snakes for hair, and she was like a half woman, half snake creature, and she could turn things into stone by looking at them. Well, he brought her head back, and as the sea monster rose out of the sea to do his business with the land held by the king and queen, Perseus swooped in, held up the head of Medusa, turned it into stone, and it crumbled and crushed and crunkled and dilapidated and disintegrated and fell into the sea and stuff, with a bunch of words I made up there. So, this is a Greek myth, and this was all these Greek characters, Perseus, Andromeda, King Cepheus, Queen Cassiopeia, Cetus the sea monster, even Pegasus, the winged horse that Perseus flew in on, are all in the sky. And so anyways, if you can find Perseus, the constellation, let's bring up Perseus right now. In his hand is a star called Algol. And Algol is said to be the blinking eye of Medusa. Let's see here if I can bring this up. So, yes. Well, Algol, the star, is also known as the Demon Star and is actually a 3-star system whose brightness can change over time because it's what's known as a variable star. Now, what happens here is that when the cooler star eclipses the hotter star, the brightness appears to dip. And the ancient people saw this, and they thought that that particular star in the constellation of Perseus was, in fact, the blinking red eye of Medusa. Well, Medusa is indeed a fearsome creature, but also we have another fearsome creature in the nighttime sky, and that is Draco the Dragon, the constellation Draco the Dragon. You may be familiar with the name Draco because it is the name of Draco Malfoy from the Harry Potter series. Well, Draco Malfoy is where he got his name from Draco the Dragon. So J.K. Rowling, the author of the series, used many Greek myths to sort of flesh out the backstories and the names of some of her characters here. In the case of Draco Malfoy, his name is based on Draco the Dragon, a constellation that we can find in the nighttime sky. So yes, we do have a witch in the sky, we have a wizard, we have a mythical creature in the form of Medusa's head and her eye. Now this is a mythical creature as well, based on, it has versions in the Greek myths and the Roman myths, but in the Greek myth, there is a goddess named Minerva, who is the goddess of wit, intelligence, crafts, and magic, and Minerva would often tangle and fight with Draco the Dragon, and until one day she had had enough of him, grabbed him by his tail, swung him around, threw him into the sky, where he remains to this day. So she had just about had enough with this stupid dragon, always causing her grief. Tossed him to the sky. Done with that. Well, all right, let's get more into the horror theme of things here. You are probably familiar with Stephen King. If you are, you might be familiar with a movie he has called Cat's Eye, based on some short stories. I mentioned J.K. Rowling, who is one of Stephen King's newest favorite authors. And Stephen King, over the years, has a lot of stories and books under his belt in his own right. You may be old enough to remember this movie called Cat's Eye. I know I am. This movie is an anthology movie, and it has several Stephen King short stories adopted for the screen. Well, there's something called the Cat's Eye Nebula. So I'm stretching it a little bit here, but Cat's Eye, the movie, based on Stephen King, Cat's Eye Nebula. Let's go take a look at it. Now, this is a planetary nebula, and it appears as a blue-green disk. Now, you can find this in the constellation Draco as well. This is how I'm connecting things. We have this bright thing in the center here. This is what is illuminating the nebula and the nucleus of the nebula itself. The difference between a nebula and a planetary nebula is pretty simple. A nebula refers to clouds of dust and gas that lies between stars in so-called interstellar space. And a planetary nebula is a special type of nebula made when the outer layers of an old giant star are thrown off into space. Now, despite its name, it has nothing to do with planets. And speaking of Harry Potter, again, I'm trying to find some themes here, but thinking of Harry Potter, and you can think about Harry's pet. He had an owl for a pet. For some reason, owls are very prominent in Halloween, but so we do have an owl nebula. So let's take a look at this owl nebula and why it has its name, the Owl Nebula. So, the Owl Nebula, or M97, is about 2,000 light years away from us. It's also a planetary nebula, just like before we were talking about. And this can be found in Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Now, this is about 8,000 years old and was formed from the outflow of material from stellar wind and this central star here. Now, the owl-like structure is created by these barrel-like structures. And if I can find these two stars here, I can maybe give the Owl Nebula some eyes. Okay. Well, that was fun. A little Halloween-themed show for Astronomy and Coffee as we settle in for our new work week on this lovely Monday. Once again, congratulations to the couple who had their marriage proposal in our planetarium after our Astronomical World of Harry Potter show. And again, if you want to win those 2 tickets to Beautifica, just email me at this email address. That's my email address at work. Email me there saying something like, hey, I wouldn't mind having some tickets to Beautifica, and then I will send that off and we will get you some tickets for the show. Well, folks, I will see you next week for another Astronomy and Coffee. Have a very safe and happy Halloween and a wonderful rest of your week. See you next week. Have fun.